So, what have we got here? It is second volume, yes. Okay, so CH8FRA. So I'm going to be looking up an F word. All right, I'm going to try and stop making stupid jokes in this Oracle Encyclopedia. I'm going to try and not get too sidetracked in this, but I am going to allow myself to run a little bit longer than roughly 3 minutes of the previous video. And I'm just going to note one thing there, the AE. Between, I think, spelling that's often in British English and American English, the A gets dropped, I think. And I'm pretty sure, well, look, I'm just guessing, but I'd say I'm right, that melding or meshing or morphing the A and the E in together like that, it used to be a letter, and I think it used to indicate don't pronounce those two letters, or vowels rather, separately. Blend them into each other and say encyclopedia, but don't labour it like that, because it's neither an A nor an E. You make the two sounds, but you blend them into each other, just like if you're playing two notes on a keyboard. You don't play them distinctly, but I'm sure there's a musical notation that I've forgotten, which indicates that you brush one into the other. There's probably a better word than that. Okay, so I'm going to open this up, and I say I'm going to look for an F word here. Last word was, what's written here? I don't know. It's just this profusely illustrated Oracle Encyclopedia. I like the name Oracle because in Greek mythology, the Oracle was this deity that you'd go to see to ask a question that you wanted to find out the answer to, and they might tell you. They probably would, but it might cost you something. So I'm going to look up a certain F word that has a relationship to Antarctica. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this book proves that whatever I look up here exists or is a thing or is part of reality. Something doesn't have to be true in the sense that it actually exists. I'm not saying it doesn't exist either, but I'm just saying that it can be true that somebody said something, or that there is a word for a concept, even if that concept is an abstract notion that doesn't exist in a physical reality that any of us perceive. It can still be true that it is a concept that somebody uttered and that people are aware of, and that you can look up to see what is that definition of a thing, regardless, independently of whether it exists or not. All right, so I'm just going to read this, and again, I'll take a little bit of a diversion, perhaps, but more. Okay, I'll just say what I'm going to say here. Okay, so firmament. I've had my preamble. So firmament is the Latin word firmamentum. Did you like my Latin pronunciation there? Vulgate for the Greek, stereoma. And don't worry if you didn't know what that is, because I didn't either. It seems to relate to a solid mass. I think what it is, though, it's a body of work in this context. And I think, when we talk about Greek Orthodox, I think this is where the Greek Orthodox comes from. I think it's a collection of books that are very much like the Old Testament, and maybe they contain some of the Old Testament and maybe some other Greek things. So again, it requires a lot further looking into, but I suspect that maybe if you really looked into this, you could see where Greek legends and mythology met Christianity, perhaps, but I could be wrong on that. And then LXX. So let's see if we can struggle through this. Oh, by the way, I did cheat and look this up. I mean, I know that L and XX is 50 plus 10 and 10. So it's 70. So I think these books were ordered into groups of 10, perhaps. And it's called something like the Septuagint, which I suppose means 70 in Latin. Anyway, so get this, and the Hebrew rakia, let's say. I don't know this at all, but I'm just guessing that it's related to the name of a port that was in the, let's say, Mediterranean anyway, and perhaps north of Africa somewhere. In Genesis, 1, 6, 7, chapter and verse, book, chapter and verse, maybe. And C, is it? And 100, maybe? I don't know. So the literal meaning, let's get on with it. The literal meaning of the Hebrew word seems to be a thin, solid plate, which has been hammered out. sounds familiar. Because recently I've been through this a little tortuously, but it's very nice to see some confirmation. When I say been through it tortuously, just the translation of the Latin word firmamentum. And the French, let's say the French, firmamentum. No, what did we say it was in French? Firmamentum? No, I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Let's go on with it. So, similar names for the sky. Now, did I skip a bit? No, similar names for the sky, scientifically incorrect, but expressing its actual appearance, are found in other languages. So the Greek uranos, English heaven. Right, so, and by the way, this is funny because can anybody guess what uranos is? Now, initially I suspected, that's to do with Ursa the bear, the great bear. And it still might have some connotations to do with that. Things can have multiple derivations and meanings. But anyway, what it is, I looked it up, and what it is supposed to be is Uranus, right? The planet we hate saying the name of because it sounds really rude. And then you hear some people saying, no, it's not Uranus, it's Uranus. And you kind of go, yeah, all right, well, it doesn't sound a whole lot better. And that sounds a bit like urine now. And apparently it sounds like urine because that is what it means. Apparently it's got to do with urination. So that's maybe something to do with the planet's colour. Is that the only reason they called it Uranus? I don't know. But it's another little thing that can be looked into later. I'm going to see if I can move... no, I was going to move the camera. Move the book down here for the next part. Okay, what did we say? So in English, heaven, or that which is elevated. And you see this a lot of times, like when something's translated as heaven or something's translated as a god, the absolutely specific literal meaning of the word is something that's very high or above everything else, this kind of thing. So, it gets the meaning across. And it doesn't diminish it, I don't think. But I think it's useful to know where the words really originate. So now, Greek, koilon, I didn't look it up. It says Latin, cælum. So this is A&E put together, which is a column, or a ceiling, or the sky, less literally. And what else did we say? It was the celestial bodies. So funny enough here, though, it says the hollow place. But don't jump into too much, and let's not get chaotic here in our little... well, I say our, but I have a tendency to take every little deviation and forget about the focal point where I was intending to get to in the first place. So this is the problem with interesting tangents. They can waylay you and you never get to the destination that you had intended in the first place. So I'll keep going. So it says German Heimlen, a roof. And I find that interesting because there was a town called Hamelin. And, we talk about a village as a little hamlet. And there was a Pied Piper of Hamelin. So everything is connected to everything else. And I put another placeholder there to look that up. Another thing, then, I think that's where we get the word, the Heimlich maneuver. Because Lich, as far as I understand it just means like in German. And so Heimlich or Heimlich maybe is roof-like or, something where you're trying to eject the piece of food that's caught in somebody's throat towards the roof, I guess. So let's continue on. The Hebrew, what's that? I can't read it there. F? The Hebrew F. Maybe it's just relating to firmament, which was supported as if on pillars by mountains. And then we're looking at other references to biblical chapters and verses. So if anybody's familiar with the Bible, the second of Samuel 22:8, Job 26:2, and served a twofold purpose. First, of supporting a reservoir of water, Genesis 1:7. Oh, it says CF cross-reference with Psalms 104, 3, and then Oh, let's struggle through these. Okay, 110 and 50, and so 68. So 368, 4, which descended as rain through windows, Genesis 7, 2, 8, 2. And then is this Malachi 3, 10? And doors. So what's this? Psalms 78, I think, and then 23. 78, 23. Psalms 78, 23. Butchering these references to the Bible. But maybe they're very familiar, these chapters and verses, to some people who do read it regularly. So secondly, of supporting the heavenly bodies. So this is where we get this word celestial from. Sun, moon, and stars, Genesis 1:15. According to the Christian fathers, by the way, if it seems like I can't read, it's because I'm reading it through the screen of my phone. So according to the Christian fathers who commented on Genesis, as late as the venerable, and I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Bede, 8th century, the earth was a flat plain, skirted by mountains, on which the firmament was supported like a dome or stretched like a skin. So we have absolute correlation here. Now, again, this is not proof, but it's correlation that the description, as it was known in 1895. So if there was a concept where people knew the firmament to be like this, not only in 1895, but this book is saying this is how the Hebrews saw it, this is how the Greeks saw it, this was their description for it, then that's exactly the same description which Auguste Picard, I don't think he was French, maybe he was French-speaking Swiss, not that that's particularly relevant, but nonetheless he went up very high. What was the altitude? I don't know, but from memory, it was probably nearly 3 times the height of cruising altitude for an airliner. So he went up pretty high, and he said something along the lines of, yeah, it looked flat, and what does it say? Surrounded by mountains, this is maybe the upturned crust, and stretched like a thin skin, or stretched like a skin anyway, let's not say thin, if words aren't there. So in short, the fixity of the firmament was necessarily combined with the flatness of the earth, a belief in which prevailed till the end of the 15th century, when the attempt of Columbus to prove its rotundity was condemned as irreligious by the Council of Salamanca. See Draper's conflict between religion and science. So I have to say, I don't know who this Draper guy is, and I haven't read the book, but that seems like another place of interest. And don't worry, if you absolutely believe in a flat earth and say it has to be true, there is no other way, don't get upset by the fact that it's saying it was believed until the end of the 15th century, implying that we don't believe it now. Everybody's free to do their own investigation. Everybody has their own mind, and free to perceive the world in whatever way they want. So I'm not saying one thing or another. I'm just saying this is what it says in this book.